Hello. There's this art called rhetoric, which is divided into five parts. Cicero wrote about it, 50 BC, a few years before the third Christ. And he lays out the five features that one has to be able to perform to be an effective lawyer, political speaker, and other forms of public communication. And the five parts are inventio, dispositio, elocutio, memoria, and pronunciatio. Inventio means you come up with an idea, then you arrange it, make it orderly. Then you might decorate it, make it pleasing, throw in a few jokes. And as part of your arrangement, you have to remember what you're going to speak about. So you have to organize your memory of what the matter is that you've invented or that you want to talk about. And then you have to deliver it effectively. So inventio, inventing the idea. Dispositio means arranging or the disposition. Elocutio is the elocution or the decorative part, the embellishment. And memoria is using memory, I'm saying Latin terms, and pronunciatio, which means delivery. So I would say that in Dobbstown, I presented a few charts. And these charts would be dispositio, the arrangement. The invention would be ion. I invented ion to the degree a human was responsible for that. So I invented ion, and that was anticipated by my chart, which was the effects preceding the causes, and that was arranged and orderly laid out before ion showed up. And then I decorated the communication of the chart with all kinds of silly, improvisatory, improvising, jamming with anybody who would talk through the years, starting at CKLN. And all along I've been delivering this whole operation because I largely communicated verbally on acoustic media in some video. And what did I remember? Well, I thought we would create something as a symbol of the memoria part of the art of rhetoric, the memory part, the memory theater. So I'm going to give an example of my amazing memory, and it helps me all the time in my speaking off the cuff and improvisational form of communication. So we have the chart, we have the product ion. We've had the delivery of this for many years, but I've never laid out the memory part of my art of communication. So we're going to demonstrate that today. I'm going to take two charts that James Joyce made to illustrate his book Ulysses. And he made these charts around 1920, and he gave them out to various people, but it was largely kept as secret for a while in the 20s. The first, I think, public acknowledgement of one of the charts came out in Stuart Gilbert's book around 1930. And but there was another chart given to a guy named Carlo Linati, Linati, that I don't know where that ended up or who harbored it or saved it or kept it. I think Sylvia Beach kept these charts secret through the 20s. She was part of it, they say. So you have the first chart, apparently is Carlo Linati's chart. But within a year, there's a second chart made, which ends up in Gilbert's book. Now, the Gilbert chart is a simpler chart, just one page, whereas the Linati chart has a lot more details and takes up more space. So it's several pages, 3 pages or more, to make up the Linati chart. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how I've memorized both charts, and I'm going to refer to the Gilbert chart first, because it's simpler. It's a one-pager. But it actually was made second, I think. And Lunati's chart's more complex, and I'll be referring to the differences between the Lunati chart and the Gilbert chart. After I state the Gilbert chart, I then will say and or and give the elaborations or changes made in the second chart, the Lunati chart, which is technically, I think, the first chart. But I'm going to present it the way I organized it in my own memory. The simpler chart, which is the second chart, I will refer to first, and the first chart, as originally made, will be uttered and discussed as the second chart. So I will say you have a certain section in the book, a certain episode. I'll give the title, give some details. That'll all be based on the Gilbert chart. Then I'm going to say and or, and that would be referring to whatever I say after and or. That'll be referring to the Lunati chart. So it'll be step by step. So I won't be presenting all the Gilbert chart and then the Lunati chart. I'm going to go through the parts, showing both as we go. So I'll say blah blah blah, and or, because I don't know if Joyce is canceling out the symbolism of the Gilbert chart with the Lunati chart. But if Gilbert was done second, then the Gilbert chart is canceling out the Lunati chart. So without trying to make it too complex, I'm referring to two different charts, and one's more complex, and it seems to have been made first. But I'm going to speak them in the reverse order. The simple chart first, and then what's added in the second chart. So here we go. Let's see. Ulysses came out in 1922, so these charts were organized by Joyce, were presented publicly a year or two before Ulysses was published, and I don't know, I haven't read too many details on them. I don't know when he made these charts or used them personally. Maybe they're just responding to requests. Lunati requested some kind of organization of the material because the book was being serialized in some magazines, literary magazines, and it probably looked pretty overwhelming. It's just a mess, and people didn't know what the hell Joyce was doing. So it's interesting. Once we do the charts, we'll then, and I'm going to do them blindfolded. I'm not looking at them. I memorized them, so I'm going to demonstrate that. Then we'll do a second video that we'll go over without the blindfold, and I'll explain how the charts seem to anticipate Iandom and Dobstown, which is pretty interesting and probably will not be easily understood by the old-fashioned scholars, but we here of the new era are open to such suggestions that I provide. Okay, so there's 18 chapters in Ulysses, so 18 episodes, we'll call them, and Joyce has paralleled activities in Dublin with activities in Homer's book story epic called the Odyssey. So there'll be a certain section in each episode where I will give the characters from Homer's Odyssey that parallel the characters in Dublin on June 16, 1904. Okay, so we'll begin this way. The first episode is called Telemachus. That's a name referring to Ulysses or Odysseus' son. Telemachus is Odysseus' son. So the first episode is called Telemachus, and the scene for it is the tower, which is the Marcello Tower, where Stephen is having breakfast with a British interloper named Haynes and Stephen's apparent buddy, Buck Mulligan. So they're living and sleeping at the Marcello Tower. So the way Joyce has it on the first chart, in the Gilbert chart, it says title, Telemachus, scene, the tower, the hour, in other words, the time, is 8 a.m. The organ is not designated. The color, which is the fifth column, because I presented the title, the scene, the hour, the organ, the color. So I'm telling you the color. The color in the first episode is white gold and or gold white. So I've just said and or, meaning in the Lunati chart, the other chart, the more complex chart, the color is presented as gold/white. But in the Gilbert chart, it's presented as white/gold. So then the sixth column is the symbol. And the symbol for the first episode is air, H-E-I-R. The art that's designated for the first episode is theology. The technique is, there's in the Gilbert chart, there's usually a simpler technique. It's a little more complex literary technique in the Lunati scheme. So the technique in the Telemachus episode, in the Gilbert chart, and I'm not going to keep saying Gilbert Lunati, so the first one's always going to be the Gilbert chart, and then the and or the second chart is the Lunati. So the technique in the first one is what is it? Oh yes, it's narrative in brackets young. So there's a technique of narrative that Joyce is going to refer to: a narrative young, narrative mature, and narrative old. There'll be 3 different episodes with that technique. So the first episode is featuring narrative done by a young man. So it's narrative in brackets young. The Lunati or and or complementary technique in the Lunati chart is dialogue for 3 and 4. That means dialogue for 3 and 4 people. Then comma, narration, not narrative, but narration. So narration is part of the first episode. And the third part is soliloquy. So after narration, comma, soliloquy. That's what you would see on the chart. So dialogue for 3 and 4, dialogue for 3 and 4, comma, narration, comma, soliloquy. Those are the 2 techniques. And then you would go to the meaning. Meaning is spelled out in the Lunati chart. There's not a column for meaning in the Gilbert scheme. So the meaning for the first episode is dispossessed son in contest. So the heir, symbolically it's called heir. We assume it's referring to Stephen, but it could refer to Buck or other competing people like Haynes in that opening chapter. But it's a dispossessed son in contest. Let's see. I forgot to mention the alternative symbol. So in the 6th column, which is after the organ, number 4, and color, number 5, you come to the 6th column, and that's symbol, and that's air, H-E-I-R. I forgot to give the and or symbols. And the and or symbols are, it says Hamlet, Ireland, Stephen. Those are the 3 symbolic names in the Lunati more complex scheme. Hamlet, Ireland, and Stephen. So Hamlet is a symbol in this book. Ireland is a symbol for something, and Stephen is a symbol for something. Now, Stephen has already been presented in the previous short novel, Portrait of the Artist's Young Man. So that character, Stephen Dedalus, in Portrait of the Artist's Young Man, may be what is the symbol for the action in the first episode of Ulysses. So I forgot to say that was a symbol. That was the complementary symbols in the Lunati chart. And then the art was theology, and the techniques were narrative, young, and dialogue for 3 and 4, narration, and soliloquy. You see all 3 of those forms of communication are in the first episode. And then the meaning is dispossessed son in contest, dispossessed son in contest. And then the people, the characters, the parallel personalities in Homer that do a complementary track to the characters in 1904 Dublin. You have Telemachus, you have Mentor. These are listed in the Lunati chart, the more complex scheme. You have Telemachus, Mentor, Antinu, Suitors, and Penelope. 5 people are listed as involved in the first chapter. When we review all this without my mask on, blindfold, we'll go into maybe some of the details of these people. So it's Telemachus, my Mentor, Antinu, the Suitors, just the word Suitors, and Penelope. Penelope being Odysseus' wife, who's been waiting for him for 10 years. Okay, second episode is Nestor. The scene is the school. The hour is 10 a.m. The color is, no, we say organ first. The organ is non-existent. There's no organ in the first 3 chapters, but there is a color. So the color for episode 2 is brown. The symbol is horse, H-O-R-S-E, and or Ulster, woman, and practical sense. Those are the 4 words: Ulster, comma, woman, comma, practical sense. And so that's the 2 types of symbols in the 2 charts. Then the art is history. The technique is catechism, in brackets, personal. And the and/or technique is dialogue for 2, as opposed to the first episode, dialogue for 3 and 4. In episode 2, it is dialogue for 2 and narration and soliloquy. The meaning is the wisdom of the ancients, and the characters in Homer's story, paralleling Joyce's story, are Telemachus again, Nestor, who was the title of the episode, Telemachus, Nestor, Pisistratus, and Helen of Troy. So that's for the parallel personages in Homer for the story. According to Joyce, are Telemachus, Nestor, Pisistratus, and Helen. Episode 3, called Proteus, scene the Strand or the beach, just outside of Dublin, that Stephen is walking along, and the time is 11 a.m. The organ is no organ in the first 3 chapters. The color is green. Then you come to column 6, the symbol. The symbol is tide, T-I-D-E, and or world, moon, tide, evolution, metamorphosis. 5 symbols: world, tide, moon. Yeah, that's the order: world, tide, moon, evolution, and metamorphosis. And the what's next? The art. The art is philology. Philology. The technique is monologue, male in brackets. Male monologue by male. And or soliloquy. Just the word soliloquy in the Lunati scheme. The meaning is primal matter. That's what Joyce has, primal matter. And that's only in the Lunati chart. Remember, the Lunati chart has this column called meaning. The Gilbert chart doesn't have that topic or subject. And then the parallel characters in Homer are Telemachus, Proteus, Menelaus, Helen, and Megapenthes. 5 people: Telemachus, Proteus, Menelaus, Helen, and Megapenthes. All right, so we've done 3 episodes. Now, that was the first part of the book. There are 3 parts in Ulysses. So part 1 is made up of these 3 episodes showing Stephen's early morning activity, Stephen Dedalus' activity at the tower, and then he's a teacher at school, and then he's walking alone after school at 11 in the morning on the Strand. Now we go to part 2, which is a very long part. There's 12 chapters, and it's focusing on Bloom, supposedly. So we go back to 8 a.m. So part 4, which is actually the first part of the first chapter episode of part 2, but we'll call it part 4, is at 8 a.m. It's the beginning of the day for Bloom, just as Stephen was in the first episode. It was 8 a.m. The hour for part 4 is 8 a.m. for Bloom. So the title of the 4th episode is Calypso. The scene is Bloom's house, 7 Eccles Street in Dublin, and the hour is 8 a.m. The organ is kidney, repeated. So that means it's also the same organ in the second chart. So I'll just say it's repeated. Now, the color in episode 4, Calypso episode, is orange. And it's repeated. Okay, so that's the first 5 columns. Then we come to the 6th column, symbol. Symbol for the Calypso is nymph, N-Y-M-P-H, nymph. And or vagina, exile, nymph, and Israel in captivity. 4 elements, 4 symbols. The vagina, exile itself. Excuse me. What was that? Yes, vagina, exile, and nymph, and Israel in captivity. So that's the symbol column. So then you go to the art. The art in the 4th episode is economics. Economics originally meant taking care of the house. So this scene is taking place in the house, episode 4. So economics is a term for household management. But in the Lunati scheme, economics gets replaced by the word mythology. So it's economics and or mythology. We'll talk about that later, about why the term mythology, why is Joyce using that for economics. So anyways, mythology is the other art. Now the technique is narrative again. We saw in the first episode said narrative young. Now we're having narrative and in brackets mature. So narrative mature. Later you're going to have narrative old. But here in the 4th episode, narrative in brackets mature. And that's referring to Bloom, who's a mature adult, supposedly. And the other technique in the Lunati scheme is dialogue and soliloquy. Actually, it's dialogue for 2 and soliloquy. We had in the first episode dialogue for 3 and 4, narration and soliloquy. In episode 2, it was dialogue for 2, narration and soliloquy, 3 types. And then in episode 3, you had just soliloquy. But now at the beginning of the Bloom cycle, you have dialogue, no narration, and it says dialogue for 2, as it was said in episode 2, the Nestor episode. So dialogue for 2 and soliloquy. So that's the other layout of technique in the Lunati scheme. So then the meaning is the departing wayfarer. So in Homer, Ulysses or Odysseus has been in captivity for many years, and he's going to be released. And that's from Calypso. So this is a reference to that, and that's why he's leaving, departing Calypso, and so the meaning is the departing wayfarer. Okay, then the parallel characters are let's see, Calypso, Penelope. So you see Ulysses, Odysseus's wife, is in this. We saw her in episode 1, but she doesn't get mentioned much. But she's in the first episode of Bloom's Day, episode 4. So it is Calypso, Penelope, Ulysses, and Callidici. Not sure how that's pronounced. I think it's Callidici. Maybe that's Callidici. Often you see in the dictionaries for these characters slightly different spelling. So I'm calling it Callidici. Callidici. Calla. Callidici. So that was Calypso, Penelope, Ulysses, and Callidici. So that's the end of episode 4. So episode 5 is titled Lotus Eaters. The scene is the bath. The hour is 10 a.m. And the organ, now did I finish the organs in Calypso? I said it was kidney, yes. It's the same organ in both charts. But here in the 5th episode, the Gilbert chart has the organ as genitals and or skin. So in the Lunati chart, it's changed to skin. Remember, the Lunati chart may have been done first. So it actually was skin and then changed within a year for the second Gilbert chart as became genitals. So the organ is genitals in the way I'm saying it, and or skin, and the color is dark brown. There's no color in the Gilbert chart, but in the Lunati chart, Joyce puts in dark brown. Okay, so then symbol is Eucharist, in the Catholic ritual called the Eucharist. So Eucharist and or host, penis in the bath, froth, flower, drugs, castration, oats. Those are a whole bunch of other symbols that are added to or supplement the simple symbol Eucharist in the Gilbert chart. So the Lunati has the word host rather than Eucharist, H-O-S-T. So host, penis in the bath, froth, and there's comma after each term, flower, drugs, castration, oats. So that's the symbol level, that's column 6. Then the art is botany/chemistry and or just chemistry. So in the Stewart chart, it is botany/chemistry, but botany is dropped in the Lunati chart and you just have chemistry. Now the technique is technique for the episode 5, Lotus Eaters, is narcissism and or dialogue, prayer, and soliloquy. 3 terms: dialogue, prayer, and soliloquy. By the way, if you Google, while you're listening to this, I forgot to mention this, I think, you can Google Gilbert schema. Put in Ulysses, Gilbert scheme, and then put in Ulysses Lunati, L-I-N-A-T-I, scheme or schema, and you can look at these charts as I'm talking here. They're there on Wikipedia. The Lunati one, it covers more parts. Okay, so it's a broader image. Let's see. So I was just describing the symbol. We did that for Lotus Eaters. We ended up with castration and oats. So then the art is, we did that, that's botany and chemistry, then chemistry. And the technique was narcissism and or and or dialogue, comma, prayer, comma, soliloquy. The meaning is the temptation of faith. The Homer characters are Eurylochus, and Polites, and Ulysses and Nausicaa. That's Eurylochus, Polites, Ulysses, and Nausicaa. Those are the parallels to the people in Dublin in 1904. Those are the Homeric parallels. So that's section episode 5. Episode 6 is titled Hades. The scene is the graveyard. The hour is 11 a.m. So Bloom is caught up to Steve. Steve in the first part of the book, the first 3 episodes, ends around 11 a.m. Now in the 6th episode, Bloom is on the way to the funeral for Patty Dignam, and he actually sees Stephen on the Strand, and Bloom is riding in the carriage with Stephen's father, so Stephen is discussed. And so it's 11 a.m. on the Strand and 11 a.m. on the way to the funeral. So what was I saying? I said the hour, 11 a.m. Now the organ is heart, which is repeated. The color is white, black, and or black, white. So white/black and or black/white. The symbol is caretaker, the graveyard's manager. So the caretaker symbol and or cemetery, Sacred Heart, the past, the unknown man, the unconscious, heart defect, relics, and heartbreak. Those are all in the symbol column in the Lunati scheme. So then you come to the art. The art is religion and or blank. There's no art in the Lunati chart, but there is an art in the Gilbert scheme called religion. Now, technique. Technique is incubism and or dialogue, comma, narration. Dialogue, narration. No soliloquy, just dialogue and narration. And so that's a technique. So the meaning is the descent into nothingness. So Joyce considers the funeral scene as a descent into nothingness. The Homeric characters are, there's many of them, because it's a group of people at a funeral, so many more than the previous scenes. So you start off with Ulysses and Elpenor. Then you have Ajax and Agamemnon. You have Hercules and Prometheus, Sisyphus and Orion, Eryphile and Laertes, and it says Laertes, etc. So something else is implied with Laertes, and Laertes is Ulysses or Odysseus's father. But there's even more characters. The list continues. There's Cerberus, there's Tiresias, there's Hades, there's Proserpina, Telemachus, and Antinous. So a long list of people for episode 6. All right, so that's the end of that section. Now we move to episode 7, which is called Aeolus. The scene is the newspaper. The hour is noon hour or 12 p.m. The organ is lungs. The color is red, and they're both repeated. And the symbol is editor and or machines, wind, let's see, machines, wind, fame, kite, failed destinies, the press, and mutability. I'll say those 7, I think it is again. Machines, comma, wind, comma, fame, comma, kite, comma, failed destinies, comma, the press, comma, mutability. Okay, so that was the symbol column. And then the art is rhetoric. The technique is enthymic, ENTHYMEMIC, and or Symbulutiki. Don't ask me about that. Symbulutiki, it's actually an obscure term in the art of rhetoric. And the second term, comma, after Symbulutiki, you have Dikanikey, and then a comma, and then you have epidictic, comma, tropes. So 4 terms from the world of rhetoric. Symbulutiki, Dikanikey, or Dikanika, Dikaniki, and then epidictic, and then tropes. The meaning for the 7th episode is the derision of victory. Interesting. The newspaper derides chemical body activity. So we have the beginning of the Menippean electric environment, the telegraph press, deriding victory of different stories in the press, scandals every day. So the derision of victory, and then the Homeric characters are Aeolus, his sons, Telemachus, Mentor, we saw Mentor in episode 1, and Ulysses. This is where Bloom and Stephen are in the same building for the first time in the newspaper office. So the people for that section are Aeolus, Aeolus' sons, Telemachus, Mentor, and Ulysses. Okay, episode 8, Lestrygonians, Lestrygonians. These are episodes that Odysseus has in his adventures, 10-year journey to get back home to Ithaca after the Battle of Troy is over, and he has encountered various problems with Calypso, Aeolus, and now Lestrygonians. So the Lestrygonian section or episode 8 takes place in the lunch, and it's at 1 p.m. The newspaper was at noon hour, so it's now 1 p.m. And the organ is the esophagus, right here, the esophagus. And repeated. The color is no color in the Gilbert chart, but in the Lunati chart, it is blood red. Blood red. The symbol is constables or policemen, constables, and or Caesar. Let me just check that. Wait a minute. What is that? Constables, police. Got Wandering Rocks. Yes. Okay, so the and or symbols for the Lestrygonians is Caesar, Christ, errors, ERRORS, comma, homonyms, comma, synchronisms, comma, resemblances. Those are the symbols for the lunchroom accompanying the policeman. So that's the 6th column, the symbol column. Then you have the art for the Lestrygonians episode is architecture. The technique is peristaltic, PERISTALTIC, and the and or peristaltic prose. So those are the 2 techniques. And the meaning is despondency. Sounds like it's not a happy meal. Despondency. The Homeric personnel are Antiphrates, Antiphates, some mean guy that bothers Odysseus and his crews. Antiphrates, the seductive daughter, and Ulysses. 3 people named in that section from Homer. Antiphrates, the seductive daughter, and Ulysses. I'm just saying the words as they're spelled out on the charts. So that's episode 8. Now let's see, I did the symbol, I did the art, and the technique. The techniques were peristaltic and peristaltic prose. Okay, so now episode 9, called Scylla and Charybdis. Scylla, Scylla, and Charybdis, Charybdis. Scylla is a rock with some mean creatures on it, and Charybdis is a dangerous whirlpool action. Not many people survive going into that area. And so the episode is called Scylla and Charybdis. The scene is the library. The hour is 2 p.m. The organ is the brain. The color, no color. And repeated, no color. The symbol is Stratford/London. So you have the home of Shakespeare, Stratford, the little town way out there in the country, and then you have the big city, London. So that's a symbolic dialectic in the Gilbert chart, but in the Lunati chart, it's expanded. You got 6 dialectics, so to speak. You have Hamlet and Shakespeare. You have Christ and Socrates. You have Plato and Aristotle. You have scholasticism and mysticism. You have Stratford and London repeated. And then you have youth and maturity. So those are the symbols for the 9th episode. And the art is literature. The technique is dialectic and or whirlpools, plural, Whirlpools. That's the alternative technique, whirlpools. The meaning is the double-edged sword. Double edge, I think, is hyphenated, and it's not edge, E-D-G-E-D, that's how I know it. Sword is just E-D-G-E. So the double-edged sword is the meaning, and the personages from Homer are Scylla and Charybdis, and Telemachus, and Ulysses, and Antinous, Antinous. Antinous is usually the Homer version of Buck Mulligan. So that's the library. No. Yeah, that's the library, Scylla and Charybdis. So then at 3 p.m., you have episode 10, The Wandering Rocks. And this scene is the streets. The time is 3 p.m. The organ is blood. And that's repeated. The color is no color and or rainbow. So the Gilbert chart has no color, but the Lunati chart has rainbow. The symbol is the citizens, or just citizens, not the citizens. In the Gilbert chart, it just says citizens, and or what? What is that? I think I screwed that up. Let's see. The citizens that's Caesar, and yes, okay. So let's go back to Laestrygonians. no, wait a minute. The Laestrygonians, what is the alternative? Laestrygonians were the constables, the police. Oh, yes, the food. Okay, so I screwed up on the alternative symbols in the Lenati schema. So the Gilbert schema had the color was blood red. And wait a minute. The Gilbert scheme had no color, but the Lenati for Laestrygonians had the color blood red. And in the symbolism of the Lenati scheme, you have bloody sacrifice, food, and shame. Not that Caesar, Christ, errors, homonyms, synchronisms, resemblance, and error and resemblance. Not that. That's going to be in the one I was just starting to do, the Wandering Rocks. So I'm correcting the Laestrygonians, the alternative symbol, the and/or symbol to the constables or the policemen is bloody sacrifice, food, and shame. Now, how would that relate to police and constables? Anyway, so that's been corrected, and that was Laestrygonians, which was episode 8, but we're in episode 10, Wandering Rocks, and they are symbolized in the Gilbert chart as citizens and or Caesar, Christ, errors, homonyms, synchronisms, and resemblances. So that's the sixth column, the symbol column. Then you get into the art for the Wandering Rocks is mechanics. The technique is, what's the technique? Technique, mechanics. Oh, labyrinth, right. The technique is labyrinth, and the and/or shifting labyrinth between two shores. So in the Gilbert chart, it's labyrinth, just simply labyrinth. In the Lenati scheme, it is shifting labyrinth between two shores. And the meaning is the hostile milieu, and the people, the Homeric parallels are objects, places, forces, and Ulysses. Now, here's the catch with the Wandering Rocks episode 10. In Homer, Odysseus does not travel through the Wandering Rocks. He avoids the Wandering Rocks. He takes the Scylla Charybdis route and successfully gets past that. So Joyce has made Bloom go through what didn't happen in Dublin. So, I mean, what didn't happen in Mediterranean. So it's interesting. What does Joyce have the parallels be? They're not people. They are environments, objects, places, and forces. And Ulysses are in the people column for the 10th episode. So that's that. Now we go to the 11th scene, the 11th episode, the 11th chapter. It's titled Sirens, and the scene is the concert room. The hour is 4 p.m. Now this is the hour when Blazes Boylan has his tryst with Molly, while Bloom is wandering around the streets and presently in a bar or in the concert room, which is part of a hotel, and listening to various people sing. So it's at 4 p.m. The organ is the ear, of course. The color is no color and or choral, C-O-R-A-L, choral. The symbol is barmaids and or promises, female, sounds, embellishments. 4 symbols laid out in the Lunati chart. Promises, female, sounds, and embellishments. And then the art is music. The technique is fuga per canonum, repeated. Fuga, F-U-G-A, per P-E-R, canonum, C-A-N-O-N-E-M, canonum. That was the technique. And then the meaning is the sweet deceit, D-E-C-E-I-T, the sweet deceit. Oh, I mean, I've been leaning back far enough. Forgot about that. But anyways, it's what I'm saying. It's important. The sweet deceit is the meaning, and the persons, the Homeric parallels are Leucothea, L-E-U-C-O-T-H-E-A, I think, Leucothea, and Parthenope, and Ulysses, and Orpheus, and Menelaus, and the Argonauts. Those are the people for the 11th chapter called Sirens. So I did that. Okay, episode 12 is called Cyclops. The scene is the tavern. The hour is 5 p.m. The organ is muscle and or muscles, comma, bones. The color is no color and or red. No, not red. Green and or green. Now, we saw green in the Gilbert scheme for episode 3, the Proteus episode. So green is taken from Proteus and put into the 12th episode, the Cyclops episode. So we're going to see what replaces green in episode 3 later. So here is the Lunati chart has Cyclops as green. The symbol is Fenian. That was the Irish rebels, the political guerrilla terrorist gang, or non-terrorists, or patriots, or liberators. So the symbol is for the Cyclops is Fenian, F-E-N-I-A-N, and or nation, state, religion, dynasty, idealism, exaggeration, fanaticism, collectivity. In the Lunati scheme, there are 8 symbols for the Fenian in the Cyclops episode. I'll say them again: nation, state, religion, dynasty, idealism, exaggeration, fanaticism, and collectivity. The art is politics and or surgery. In the Lunati scheme, the art is not politics for the Cyclops in the tavern. It is surgery. Then the technique is gigantism, G-I-G-A-N-T-I-S-M, gigantism, and or alternating asymmetry. Alternating asymmetry, A-S-Y, is that 2 S's? A-S-Y-M-M-E-T-R-Y. Alternating asymmetry, sort of like the shifting labyrinth between 2 shores. You're going to see this interplay or tactile factor in what Joyce means. And I'll be describing that later when we go into the details after I remove my blindfold. So, meanwhile, we're showing this fantastic memory I possess, and I'm even remembering to lean back. So we had the symbols, we had the art, which was politics, then replaced by surgery, and the technique, gigantism, and alternating asymmetry. So the meaning is egocidal terror. That's E-G-O-C-I-D-A-L. Egocidal terror is the meaning in the Lunati chart. And the Homeric parallels are Prometheus, Nomen, that's N-O-M-A-N, Nomen, Galatea, and Ulysses. So Prometheus, Nomen, Galatea, Galatea, and Ulysses. So that's the episode 12. Episode 13 is called Nausicaa, Nausicaa. That's the title, Nausicaa. The scene is the rocks. That's another part of the strand that we saw Steve walking on in episode 3. So the rocks is going to have an adventure for Bloom on the strand, the same area that Steve was close to. Stephen Dedalus. So the scene is the rocks, and the hour is 8 p.m. So the tavern was 5 p.m., and then you have this big 3-hour gap, and you get to 8 p.m. where Bloom is near the strand or looking at the strand. And a lot happened in the tavern, so that took a few hours. So now it's 8 p.m. So the organ is eye and nose, E-Y-E, eye and nose. Repeated eye and nose in the Lunati scheme. The color is gray, blue, and or gray. Now, the gray-blue in the Gilbert chart for the 13th episode called Nausicaa, the blue goes up to episode 3 and fills the hole made by green leaving episode 3 and going to episode 12, the Cyclops episode. Remember, Cyclops had no color and or green. The green came from episode 3, and now episode 13 is offering blue to fill in episode 3. So that leaves gray for the color in the Lunati scheme of the Nausicaa chapter. So that's the color. We did the organ and the color. The symbol is virgin and or onanism or masturbation. Onanism, feminine, hypocrisy. So 3 terms in the Lunati chart. Onanism, comma, feminine, comma, hypocrisy. And the symbol in the first chart for that episode was virgin. So then the art is painting, repeated in both charts, painting. The technique is tumescence/detumescence. That means erect penis and then not erect penis. You know, a full-blooded penis and then a shrunken post-ejaculation penis. So that's the technique in the 13th episode. And or retrogressive progression. That's what Joyce has in the Lunati chart for the painting Nausicaa on the rocks. The scene where Bloom masturbates, looking at the virgin, Gertie McDowell. So what did I say that was? That was retrogressive progression. Okay, so then the meaning is the projected mirage. The projected mirage is the meaning in the Lunati chart. And then the Homeric personnel parallels are Nausicaa and her handmaidens. She was a princess. Nausicaa and her handmaidens. And Alcinu, the king, her father, Nausicaa's father, King Alcinu, Alcinous, and the queen Arete, Arete, maybe it's 2 R's, I'm not sure, Arete, and then Ulysses. So the characters, the Homeric characters for episode 13 are Nausicaa, handmaidens, Alcinu, Arete, and Ulysses. Now, we're almost finished. Episode 14 is titled Oxen of the Sun, and it takes place in the hospital. The scene is a hospital. The hour is 10 p.m. and the organ is womb and or matrix, comma, uterus. So the Gilbert chart has just womb. The Lunati chart has matrix, comma, uterus. The color is white, repeated white and white. The symbol is mothers and or fertilization, frauds, that's Frauds, and parthenogenesis. So 3 symbols in the Lunati scheme to counter the symbol of the mothers in the Gilbert chart. So that was fertilization, this is chapter 14, called Oxen of the Sun, fertilization, frauds, and parthenogenesis. The art is medicine and or physics. In the Lunati chart, the art physics replaces medicine. Remember, actually, the Lunati chart is done first, according to our history of Joyceana. So it was originally physics, and then it got changed to medicine in the Gilbert chart. But I'm saying in the reverse order. So the Gilbert chart, the art is medicine. The Lunati chart, it is physics. The technique is embryonic development and or prose, embryo, fetus, birth. 4 parts there. Prose, comma, embryo, comma, fetus, comma, birth. And then in the Gilbert chart, it said just mothers. So the meaning is the eternal herds, Herds, the eternal herds. The personnel from Homer are Lampetie, 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 and Phaethusa, Phaethusa. 2 Greek characters, Lampetie and Phaethusa. Then Helios, it was the sun god who had these oxen. Remember, the title was called Oxen of the Sun. So Helios and Hyperion, or Hyperion, Hyperion, Hyperion. It's the first time 2 names have been in the same level. So then you have Jove and Ulysses. So the Homeric parallels are Lampetie, Phaethusa, Lampetie and Phaethusa, Helios and Hyperion, and Jove and Ulysses. Now, episode 15, it's titled Circe, Circe. The scene is the brothel. The hour is midnight or 12 a.m. The organ is locomotor apparatus, and or locomotor apparatus and skeleton. The Lunati scheme adds skeleton to locomotor apparatus. The color is no color and or violet. It's violet in the Lunati chart. The symbol is whore and or, here's a long one, zoology, personification, pantheism, magic, poison, antidote, and reel. And reel is spelled R-E-E-L. It's very important. The movie reel is part of the symbols for the 15th chapter called Circe. Repeating that, the Gilbert symbol is just whore, but the Lunati scheme has zoology because Circe would turn people into swine. So she'd create a zoo. So the first symbol is zoology, and then personification. then pantheism, then magic, then poison, then antidote, and finally real. Those are the symbols. For the 15th chapter, the art is magic and or dance. The technique is hallucination and or exploding vision. See, that's pretty neat. The movie chapter, you could say, with this real REEL symbolism, the techniques are exploding vision and, no, hallucination and then exploding vision in the Lunati scheme. The meaning is the man-hating ogress. So Circe is a man-hating ogre, female version, ogress, O-G-R-E-S-S. And the personnel from Homer are Circe, the swine, Telemachus, Ulysses, and Hermes. Hermes gives a herb to Ulysses or Odysseus to survive the magic of Circe. I think the herb was called Moly, M-O-L-Y, which is like the name Molly for Bloom's wife. So, anyways, that's why you have Hermes in the list of personnel: Circe, swine, Telemachus, Ulysses, and Hermes. So you have in the charts the name Ulysses, even though I guess that's the Roman version, whereas the Greek version is Odysseus. I've been tending to say Odysseus. Okay, that's the 15th episode. 16th episode is called Eumaeus. Now, the Circe episode, which is like 150 pages, it's laid out like a movie script or a theatrical script, mainly a movie screenplay. Very long chapter. That ends part 2, which was 12 chapters. Now we got 3 more chapters left, and that's going to end the book, chapters 16, 17, 18. So now Ulysses is back in Ithaca. So episode 16, called Eumaeus, titled Eumaeus, the scene is at the shelter, sort of like the cab taxi shelter, and the hour is 1 a.m., 1 in the morning. The brothel scene was at midnight. Now it's 1 a.m. And the color is non-existent. Now, if you notice, the first part 1, the first 3 chapters with Stephen in the Marcello Tower. It's funny, I can't remember. It's Martello? I think it's M-A-R-T, not Marcello. Martello Tower, and then the school, and then on the strand or beach. Those first 3 chapters, you had the color, but no organ. In the last 3 chapters, which is part 3, you have an organ, but no color. So it's a mirror image, or if you think of the mirror as reversing. So there's no color in Eumaeus, episode 16, but there is an organ, and the organ is nerves, N-E-R-V-E-S. The symbol is sailors, and there's no symbol in the Lunati chart. So sailors is the symbol, and that's only in the Gilbert chart. Okay, so then the art is navigation. No art in the Lunati scheme. So mainly this is just the Gilbert chart. So the symbol was the sailors. The science was navigation. The technique was, now we're going to mirror the first 3 chapters. Just as chapter 1 had, the technique was narrative young, then chapter 4 was narrative mature. In chapter 16, it's narrative old. That's the technique. And or relaxed prose. So the Lunati scheme has relaxed prose as the technique of the 16th chapter. The Gilbert chart had only narrative old to reflect chapter 1, which was the Telemachus chapter. So then that's the technique. Two techniques. Narrative in brackets old and relaxed prose. Then the meaning is the ambush on home ground. Now, Ulysses, Odysseus, is now back in Ithaca, and he wants to reclaim his palace, take over his rightful role of running Ithaca, and he has to deal with the many suitors, been hanging around Penelope for 10 years trying to take over Ulysses' property, and they've heard rumors, or they're waiting for him to return, and they plan on killing him. So Ulysses, the meaning of that chapter, Joyce wrote, the ambush on home ground. So that was meaning. And then the personnel are Eumaeus, who's an old friend of Odysseus, a loyal servant. So Eumaeus, Ulysses, Telemachus, the bad goat herd, and Pseudangelos. Pseudangelos, Pseudangelos. Sudan, was that Pseudangelos? The bad goat herd, Goatherd, one word. So you've got Eumaeus, Ulysses, Telemachus, that's Ulysses' son, the bad goat herd, and the Pseudangelos. Now, in part 2, those 12 chapters, if Telemachus and Ulysses are mentioned in the same scene, like in in the newspaper office and in the library, Telemachus is always mentioned first. But now we're in part 3. Ulysses is back home, and his son is under his direction. So it's always lists Ulysses first, rather than in part 2 where Telemachus was listed first. So here in the Eumaeus episode, the personnel are Eumaeus, Ulysses, Telemachus, the bad goat herd, and Pseudangelos. So then you come to the second last chapter, the penultimate chapter called Ithaca. Bloom has successfully brought Stephen back to his home, and the title is Ithaca, and the scene is the house. And we saw the two words, the house, used in chapter 4, the first scene of part 2, where Bloom is making breakfast, and that was called the house, and that was 8 a.m. But now it is 2 p.m. The Ithaca chapter is at 2 a.m. in the house, and the organ is skeleton. But we know that in the 15th episode, locomotor apparatus in the Gilbert schema for Circe, the 15th chapter, but in the Lunati scheme, skeleton has been added to locomotor apparatus. So skeleton was taken from episode 13, chapter 17, the Ithaca chapter. And so it does say in the Gilbert scheme skeleton, but in the Lunati chart for the 17th chapter, it has juices replace skeleton. Juices, Juices. So that's the organ in the Lunati scheme. And then you have, no color. You just have organ, no color. So the symbol is comets, COMETS, comets. The art is science itself, and the technique is mirroring chapter 2, the Nestor chapter, which was Catechism Personal. Now you have Catechism Impersonal, impersonal in brackets. Now this is a chapter made up of nothing but questions and answers. There are 300 questions and 300 answers, according to my count. And so the second last chapter, Ithaca, has the technique of Catechism Impersonal. And the Lunati technique is, so it's Catechism Impersonal and or dialogue, pacified style, and fusion. So dialogue, comma, pacified style, comma, fusion. Fusion, I guess, referring to the bonding between Leopold Bloom and the young man Stephen Dedalus. So that was the two techniques. And the meaning, it says, armed hope, ARMED, HOPE, armed hope. That's the science art. Science art has the meaning armed hope. So that's something to talk about later. And then the Homeric personnel are Ulysses again, listed first, and then Telemachus. And then you have Euryclea, EURYCLEIA, I think, Euryclea, and the suitors. Remember, the suitors are waiting there at the Ulysses' home and are ready to kill him. So Ulysses and Telemachus have to conspire and figure out how to take over the palace and kill the suitors, and then they've got to get Penelope to believe that this person in disguise is her husband, Ulysses. So, chapter 17, the characters were Ulysses, Telemachus, Euryclea, and the suitors. Now we come to the end, chapter 18. Someone pointed out there are 18 letters in the original Old Irish alphabet. So isn't it interesting? You've got 18 chapters mirroring the 18 letters of the Irish alphabet, the ancient Irish alphabet. So this chapter is titled Penelope. The scene is the bed, Penelope's bed, or she and Leopold Bloom's bed. And the hour is eternity or infinity. There's no particular clock time. When you come to Molly, Molly is Leopold Bloom's wife's name, Molly Bloom, but she is symbolized by Ulysses' wife named Penelope. So the chapter title is Penelope. The scene is the bed. The time is eternity. The hour is eternity, the non-hour. The organ is flesh and or fat. So there's no color in the part 3, but there's two organs. First case in the Gilbert chart is flesh. In the Lunati scheme, it is fat, F-A-T. The symbol is earth. Penelope represents earth, whereas Eumaeus represented sailors and Ithaca represented comets. You've got Molly or Penelope representing earth. Now, there's no art in this female dominant chapter. Isn't that interesting? No art. And then the technique is monologue, in brackets, female. Remember, part 3, the Proteus chapter, had monologue with male in brackets. That was Stephen Dedalus doing a soliloquy on the strand. And so now you have Molly. The last chapter is made up of her thoughts as she's sitting in bed. Bloom has come home. She knows he's had Stephen in as a guest for a while. Stephen leaves, and then Leopold Bloom comes to bed. And so the content of the 18th chapter is the thoughts of Molly thinking about her marriage to Leopold Bloom and all the lovers she had, and plus the affair she had with Blazes Boylan earlier in the day. And Bloom is getting to bed, fully aware of all these factors, and he gets into bed and sleeps with his head beside her feet. and his feet are beside her head, so they sleep opposite to each other while lying beside each other. So Molly is thinking about all these things, reviewing her life. She is, what is it? Repenting, retracing her life. We have this new meaning we've discovered, Roxy discovered. Repent means to retrace. So the technique is monologue in brackets female, and or just monologue and resigned style. Remember in the Ithaca episode, it was, no, let's say in the Eumaeus, chapter 16, it was relaxed prose. In the 17th Ithaca chapter, it is pacified style. And then in the last chapter, Joyce calls it resigned style. Molly is resigned in some way. So it's monologue and resigned style in the Lunati chart, and it's monologue, female in brackets, in the Gilbert scheme. So that was the technique. The meaning is the past sleeps. You know, we had in the Eumaeus chapter 16, it said the ambush on home ground. Chapter 17, the Ithaca episode was armed hope. And the final meaning is the past sleeps. So what you have there is Bloom is sleeping. He falls asleep while Molly basically can't fall asleep, and she's just thinking all night. And then the Homeric parallels are Ulysses, and no Telemachus in this chapter. It says Ulysses, Laertes, that's Ulysses or Odysseus' father. We saw him mentioned in chapter 6, the Hades graveyard chapter. So you have Ulysses, Laertes, and Penelope. So Penelope is mentioned in the first chapter, the Telemachus chapter, and then the chapter 4, the Calypso chapter, and then in the final, remember in the Calypso chapter, that was the first chapter for the 12 scenes around Bloom. So here in part 3, it ends. The last word is the third Homeric character, Penelope. And that ends the sermon. So, wasn't that awesome? I could see the audience is applauding. Millions of them out there. And I put on the headphones to hear the sound. How can I hear the sound? Yeah, could you do that again? I didn't get to hear it.
The clapping?
Yeah, the clapping.
Well, at the end, it was very funny because I had the full screen, and
Yes.
then it went to small screen, and the iTunes opened on the Revelations, and so on the background you see the iTunes, and it says recently played.
Something you were listening to.
Yes, but it was already closed, and it's now it's like the frame of your image. But for me, it's like Ian is saying, this is a replay
of Revelation.
Of the, yeah, it's always about frequencies and the new song and the replaying. And I find it very interesting how it ends in the repentance, because I understand really now that you were doing all your life the repentance, retracing to the tree of life.
Yes.
That is
right.
That's all. All these charts are about looking back to the alpha omega point, which is the end and the beginning, because there is no linear. Yes, so
that's pretty neat. Okay, so when we do another recording, we'll bring up what you're mentioning and go over the meanings I find in those charts.
Yes, and I it's like Ian was saying on the last payday, you put things on plain sight. For example, when you say, it's just an example, but there are many things, these symbols and the organs and all this. For example, you say Elos and hyperion, and
yes.
I immediately think about the winds and the relationship to the Ionic, and how these words just trigger a lot of information that has been said,
Yes.
but only like the 1%ers understand and know, because as Ion said,
they're wealthy.
From the beginning, this is from the only for the 1%ers. It's not for the 99.
Yeah. It's for the wealthy 1%ers, the Rothschilds, the Bilderbergers, the Illuminati, the Ford. You go, they're the only ones who can afford to understand me, because they can afford to buy all the recordings and find out what they didn't know. So we hope that you could join the elite.
For me, it's really impressive. It's really impressive how things are like synchronized. Like, like I'm into the genealogy and things link. It's like a hyperlinking with the LaRouche. You are, and the things he's saying about the metaphysics, and then what Ion said from the beginning that I understand now.
You're starting to fade out, so I have to call you. I can't make. You're starting to blip out, so let me call you and we'll connect there so I can hear you.
Yes, what I understand now is that
LaRouche, the connection to LaRouche.
Yes, because he says the metaphysics are the things in the universe that cannot be explained in a rational way, but then
in a linear way.
Yeah. And it's like we automatically overlay with the multiverse is not only a universe, and is a meta non-physic and
non-linear.
Yes, so I understand now that we were really all this time repenting, to retracing all the things you put on plain sight and hyperlinking between the Bible and the Wake and the charts and the revelations from Ion and the information he's putting for us to engage. Like he says, we're not helping, we're not explaining, we're not teaching. This is just presenting the information that was always in plain sight, but it was not to be understood until now, with all this process that you started without being, I will say, aware. Ion doesn't like that word, but of what you were doing, but now we see it. And I was thinking as you were doing this, like when you memorize things are like somehow recorded in your brain with your neurons. So I suppose this is also a part of the process you need in your brain to do your repentance, to do the remembering of the renewing.
Right. Yep. And your words didn't come through clearly. You said that Ion said that I hid everything in plain sight.
Yeah, he said it on the last payday. Today is the 17th September 2015. But he also said that same phrase on the Genesis number 1. And I was listening to that exactly before you called.
And what did he say in Genesis 1? He said hiding in plain sight. What did he say was being
because you asked about the levels of meaning in the Finnegan's Wake.
Right.
and because there is much more there, which is like encrypted.
Yes.
And he says no comment. I'm looking for what
There's no comment at first.
He says he's not going to comment on that, on the ciphering of the wake. But he says, yeah, Bob is always hiding things on plain sight.
He said that in Genesis. That would have been November 2011, and you're listening to today after last Saturday when he said he repeated that I was hiding in plain sight 4 years later. That's what you're saying, right? 4 years later, he said it on payday that I hide things in plain sight.
Yes, and I suppose this encrypted meaning of the wake is only to be revealed to you.
Well, it's been revealed. It started to be revealed to me and Ginny. And there are 3 rings in Finney's wake, but Ian said there were 4 rings. And the 4th ring was what non-physical added to the wake. I don't think Joyce was aware of the 4th ring. And Ian has explained a bit of the contents of the 4th ring to Ginny and I. But that was a few years ago. We haven't pursued that lately.
Yeah, and for me, this is becoming like the most amazing story, because it's like the complexity of all these things, how they're interlinked, and how they're being made clear, and how things are developing. It's like you can make a Bobby say, like the the back,
what?
the Bobby say, like you're Ulysses.
The Odyssey.
You're Ulysses going back to Ithaca, to the and yes, but it's not a myth. Is these archetypes being replayed? The archetypes from the Bible and from, for example, the Odyssey.
Yes.
And the most amazing is that it's true.
Yes. We deliver something you can eat and experience.
Yes, it's like.
Now, did you you sat there during this hour and half an hour? What was it? An hour and a half? Did you fall asleep, or you were just listening? You actually look different now than before. Did you change your hair while
No.
sitting there?
No. No, I was just listening here. I don't know, my brain was making associations with, like the organs, the color, this and that. It's like it triggers things I'm remembering. Like you say, all these things are very ionic, and maybe people that have been listening for some years and a lot, and these words, these symbols, these triggers things, It's like a hyperlink. And I don't know how these words or the symbols really work, but I suppose that it's triggering something.
Yeah.
In like in your remembering.
This had to be done today.
The remembering and the knowing is I could not explain what is this process of how the repentance is making us go back to the knowing, and how the words are used to trigger this remembrance.
I guess what I notice is you look like the way you'd be dressed at a symphony orchestra. You like you have your best clothes on, kind of.
But actually, no. I have like a jogging jacket and a t-shirt and jeans.
But your hair looks like the way you might put it back for.
I just have a ponytail, so.
Oh, okay. Right.
Maybe it's just
Well, we were doing classical culture. Ulysses is classical culture, so maybe it made you look classical in my mind.
Yeah.
So let's see. You got to go in a few minutes, but we got it done. We've been waiting for a long time to get the opportunity to do this. We had to get a new camera or a new computer. Now we actually did this a few weeks. I don't know, 3 or 4 weeks ago, when your computer was broken and you borrowed a friend's computer, but it didn't have the power to take it all in. It was all flickering and crummy.
Yeah,
We had to redo it.
now that the Ionic is in this computer, it
Yes.
opens things on its own and changes
And Ion
things
did
on
say
its
that. Ion said that
own.
they put themselves in Roxy's computer. They're in charge of it, so we expect.
Yeah, so it's funny because on your background, it's the iTunes opened on its own and are like the Revelations
Wow,
recordings.
there's something around it.
And well, it's all like a replay. It's like a comment from them. Like this is all a
Yes.
replay.
This is something to do
It
with
all
the
has
Revelation.
already been recorded.
Right.
It's all
And scholars have shown there's an incredible number of references to all the major religions in Finnegan's Wake, as well as all the major arts and all the major historical battles and the historical pop culture. It's all in Finnegan's Wake, but that was all implied in the book of Revelation.
yes,
too.
and I was listening to the Genesis, but it opened the playlist of the Revelations. So I suppose it's like a comment. The Revelations are supposed to be the end, but are actually the beginning of the
Odyssey,
Bible.
of the journey.
Yes.
That's episode 4, the Calypso episode, symbolized by the departing wayfarer, where Odysseus is leaving Calypso and he's going to get home after being stranded on Calypso's island for 7 years or something. And so that's what the book of Revelation is, the beginning point. And then we travel through the Old Testament and get to the Garden of Eden. That's how you're supposed to read the Old Testament, in reverse order.
Yes, and for me, it's really fascinating to see how different works are connected, and we were not aware of that. But at
Yeah, you remember that?
the beginning, how this
The bug inning.
at the beginning, like Joy said.
Yeah, the insect. The
Yeah.
opening bug porn. Now there's
Yeah, at the beginning of the fall, of the fall is like all medias, somehow all works of men connect without we knowing that we were just repenting.
well, it's the sphere. It's the acoustic echo chamber, which literacy spread out made a flat narrative.
Yes, and we see the acoustic space and how there's no linearity. There
Right.
cannot be linearity, chronology, rationality to
when
understand.
you are ascended.
Yeah.
When you're ascended. It's when you fall into the writing effect, which was a happy fall. We enjoyed the products of reading and writing, but we've had enough of that now.
We
So
tasted the ice cream.
Yeah, it went from the I scream. Writing was the fall, so everybody started screaming for 3,000 years, and now. Remember, Ion said the other night, we're moving to ice. The Tridocia goes from air, fire, water to ice. So it's ice scream, not I scream. DYE scream to ice, or nice cream. This guy Znore, Z or Znore, did that article on McLuhan called Mirza McLuhan. If you look at his other essays, he's got many essays. He has a lot of art in it, a lot of great pictures showing different eras and cultural phases that try to create the spherical effect.
Yes, and
using painting.
we will have to edit all images of Eve giving Adam the apple. She's given
Yes.
an ice cream cone.
Yeah, yeah. And of course the iPhone, the iPod, the iPad, the Ion.
Yes, you are on. Well,
I am on.
we have
Yes.
to
Oh, it's
end the
12:30. It's time
recording.
to go.
Thanks a lot, and then
Thank
we'll do the next explanation. Bye.
Thanks, Jesus. Goodbye. Thanks a lot, Roxy.
Thank you.